Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to VidCon Now. I'm Christina Woody Train, founder of Buckshot Marketing, and I am legitimately super stoked to be here with Lauren Bosworth, founder and CEO of Love Wellness, one of my personal favorites. How are you, Lauren?
Hi, I'm doing so well. How are you?
I'm good. You're such a vision, I have to say.
That is very kind because I actually am on set today. I have no makeup. I'm under the fluorescent lights. I was going to say, you look so beautiful, and I'm just so excited to be here with you. Hi.
Hi. Yeah, so I know we have a lot to discuss, and I think just opening it up, the first thing I'm really curious about, and I think our audience as well, is you've definitely showcased that you can do multiple things and really be successful at a lot of them. And I'm just curious, can you tell us a little bit about how you went from sort of like this TV star to like a full-fledged founder, CEO, entrepreneur of a brand that's really changing the way sort of women show up in the market with Love Wellness?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that is becoming more acceptable now is that you can be sort of a Jack or a Jane of all trades or many trades. Whereas a few years ago, you sort of had to stay in your lane, pick your thing, and that was it. For me, obviously, I run a women's wellness company, but I also love to cook as an example. And when I'm on Instagram, my cooking stories get 10x the views than anything I do related to my business. So it just goes to show you can have many passions and interests,
Yeah.
and I think that the audience is open to that at this point. Everybody is multifaceted, and I think the point of the internet, if you choose to do so, is to share many different aspects of your life. I think what people are also doing right now really well on social is pivoting outside of their sort of traditional brand image to talk about Black Lives Matter and things like that. People realize now that it's not just about your stupid feed. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
the internet is the place where you should be talking about the things that matter to you. So sorry for the little pivot, but so for me, my background is in television. I was on The Hills in Laguna Beach. Gosh, such a long time ago now. That programming ended in 2010. And I know it's wild, 10 years ago. And in that period of time, I have been focusing on myself and how to build brands and businesses that come from my heart and soul. I've always been interested in I've always been somebody that's interested in running my own business and kind of creating my own path to a certain degree. And so I started by creating my own website, creating content, food content, wellness content. I was able to monetize that really effectively. So I learned a lot about marketing and brand building, but I'm somebody that likes stuff, physical, tangible stuff that you can hold in your hand. And I've always been a beauty fanatic, but I had a really interesting experience with illness a few years ago that really caused me to shift my personal perspective in how I approached the world, consumerism in general, and just what I learned about sort of the human body and women's health in general. So I went through a period where I was experiencing very severe vitamin deficiencies, and it was causing me to have all of these health problems. I was depressed. I was anxious. I had gut health issues. I was at the OBGYN all of the time. And so I was at the drugstore all of the time, and I felt like all of the legacy brands and the pharmaceutical companies were not serving me very well. First, I had no idea really what any of those personal care products did, how they functioned with the human body, and really if they were even that effective, to be totally honest with you. And I think a lot of women experience that when they are ill. It can turn into some kind of chronic issue because there aren't great products or services available to you. You don't have enough education about these things, or you are not being taken seriously enough by your doctor. And so, I mean, we could go into like a whole conversation about women's wellness from that perspective, but we won't today. But I realized that there was a huge opportunity in women's wellness, which is a very broad catch-all term, to try to affect positive change for women when it comes to their bodies and how we take care of our bodies. So that is sort of the brief background on how I made the transition from television to sort of internet brand person to, founder and CEO of a CPG business.
Yeah, so you touched on a lot there, and I kind of want to unpack it a little bit because I know when we spoke before that you just said a lot of things that I found so interesting, especially as a woman that myself has gone through the medical system, my OB, whatever. So first, I want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned the importance of like understanding, and I know you really lean into like things being research based and sort of seeing it a new way and kind of breaking free of like the legacy of what we think we should be doing or products we should be using, and really applying
Mm-hmm.
a female gaze of research to your brand. Talk a little bit about that, because I found that to be very interesting when you just said kind of like the lack of research or education, or kind of like having to unlearn like legacy things as we approach wellness.
Yeah, 100%. I think just very recently, you have started to see more brands and companies start to invest more money into women's research when it comes to their health and wellness, right? But like, we still don't even really know like how female orgasms work. Like, there's a lot to figure out there and to unpack, right? What I learned when I was starting the company is that the majority of the products on the shelf from legacy brands were invented decades ago by men. Not to say that their intentions were bad or anything like that, but they were created through a very specific lens, right? By men, for women, lacking a huge amount of scientific research and evidence. I think what we know about women's bodies now is that they are complicated, sacred beings, and everybody has their own unique microbiome when it comes to women's health. And a lot of the newer brands are focusing on how to maintain and improve upon that microbiome. Whereas all of the products that are available at the drugstore, totally disregarded for reasons I don't even know. But the products that we make specifically support this part of the body and how it actively functions to support women's wellness. So I'll give you an example. We make a product called Good Girl Probiotics, and it's different than your traditional probiotic, which is for gut health, you could say. And our probiotic over here is developed specifically for women's health to support vaginal tract health and urinary tract health. And we do that by putting bacteria in it that are organic to women's female microbiomes to support that part of the body. And so to me, it's pretty logical thinking, right? But we have been able to sort of create and invent and reinvent products that have been in market for women based on clinical research and the guidance of our amazing wellness advisory board to actually provide products for women that support their bodies, allow them a lifestyle that they enjoy, but that they can take care of in like a safe and functional way that makes sense to them. And I think at our core, what we do really well beyond just our product formulation is the education of our consumer. So we have, like I said, this amazing wellness advisory board of women that creates the lion's share of the content that we share across our community, across Instagram, across our advertising platforms. And these are all incredible doctors, nutritionists, food scientists that are really like bringing their A game when it comes to helping educate our community about how women's bodies actually work, right? And like, if you think about it, you maybe have 30 minutes of sex education in your life at school, but like at no time did we learn about how our own biology actually functions and how to take care of our unique bodies and bodily systems.
I think what you said about like, and all doing this with this idea that like you can still maintain your lifestyle and do you, because there's nothing more of a bummer than like having a women's issue or a personal issue or something that keeps you from kind of like living your life or whatever you want to do. So the fact that you guys are bringing that female gaze to the product, but also the research is just something that I don't think I've seen on the market before. And then, so that part I think is interesting in terms of like just the research and you really approaching it from an educational perspective. But then on the other side, and I know you probably can speak very well to this, a lot of people are starting companies and there's this idea of like, I'm a CEO because I'm on Instagram and take my picture and hashtags. But I know like you are definitely involved in the business. So talk a little bit about like what goes on behind the scenes as a founder and CEO off the gram per se.
Well, it's a lot, and I'm here in no makeup today, so I think that's part of it. You know, often I do panels and I I like rarely put on makeup because I just don't have the time. And it's not my first priority. You know what I mean? I think you see a lot of these sort of influencer leaders of brands that really are representative of sort of the brand image, and they're available for press, and that's it. And there's nothing wrong with that, mind you, but they fill like a specific role within an organization. What goes on behind the scenes is a lot. So I started the business 4 years ago. I started it by myself. I started iterating in May of 2016 and launched the brand in October of 2016. And I literally built it in my living room on my computer, built the first Shopify site myself, had one friend who was a photographer help me with imagery, and like, boom, put it out into the universe one day. And since then, I have been entrenched, I would say, in the product development, in the brand building, in the storytelling and messaging, and what you visually see on the consumer end. The strategy of the business is also really an exciting part of it to me. So, how we raise money, who becomes our partners, what types of deals do we do? But I have an amazing partner who's our COO, CMO, who really helps me operate the business on a day-to-day level. And so it's a really good split between us in terms of how we manage the business and operate. And behind the scenes, like, we've onboarded 5 people during COVID, which is not a piece of cake. So, there's some people on my team I haven't even met in person yet. So it's a lot to manage. And I think 2020 has been a particularly challenging year for all of the obvious reasons. We're working from home. There's deep civil unrest that we must address. And there's the coronavirus. So every day we're sort of pivoting and trying to do our best to, be true and stay true to our mission, right?
So you mentioned this idea of like, actually being involved in the business and the creative and the content. I know, just being familiar with your brand, you guys clearly take the connection between content and commerce very seriously. And I see a lot of education in your content, but I also see a lot of just like lifestyle and fun and, celebrating like all of us as sort of like women trying to take care of our bodies as best as we can. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of the connection between content and commerce for your brand?
Yeah, absolutely. It comes back to education being one of the pillars of the brand in general. Because, frankly, selling supplements and personal care items, it's a challenging business to be in, right? You have to create consumer trust, and you have to be able to do that quickly, readily, and continuously. And so how do you do that? And for us, we understood from the very beginning that having that medical advisory board, these true brand ambassadors, where you can connect with them on our community and send them an email and DM them, and you can read about them in articles, would be really, really important to building that foundation of trust. And so for us, educating the consumer is a huge part of what we do and how we sell product. Because frankly, most women come to What Love Wellness and they have an aha moment, right? You might see an ad or something on Hulu about the brand that is really interesting and engaging and kind of speaks to that feminine gaze or that female gaze on how we view the category. For example, we ran our first big advertising campaign, was called Don't Just Deal. And it took you through all these different scenarios of women just dealing with these medical issues and how Love Wellness sort of creates the solution for that. And, it was a advertisement, but the amount of positive comments that we got on Instagram was like remarkable. Everyone was like, you hit that literally right on the nose. And so I think what we're trying to do, separate from education, is just really get to the core of what it means to be a woman and how emotional it feels to have something going on with your body, right? And previously, if you were watching a commercial from a legacy brand, it was like flowers and ladies dancing in the gym and laughing together. Or the opposite end of the spectrum, women making jokes about their own bodies, right? And so how do we communicate to our consumer that, hey, like, you're just bloated, you just have a yeast infection? Like, we're trying to break down the narratives that have constantly existed about women and their bodies and the shame that we have been made to feel about these things, to just let them know, like, hey, it's all right to have a problem, and we have a product that solves that for you. And when you hold it in your hands, it also makes you feel really good about yourself. And you're learning about how your body works. And you're also learning how, kick butt St. John's wort is also. So, we're approaching it from many different angles.
I mean, it's just so, I just love that. And like that narrative is just so important because, like you said before, like if you just know that, hey, it's just a yeast infection or you just have some bloating or whatnot, then you are able to sort of say, okay, well, this brand understands me, it gets me, but also like I can keep going with my lifestyle, as you mentioned before, because this is a brand that is sort of helping usher me through that, as opposed to your point being like, it's just a regular day. I go swimming, I go horse, like the whole like previous legacy brands. So I have this amazing visual of you in your living room with your laptop, plugging away, building the first Shopify site. But obviously, it's a very good vision. I feel like you were dressed cute and like you had like your whole vibe going, but you had makeup list, top dot, and you're just like plugging away with all of your personal, professional passions coming together, it sounds like. So you're probably happy to be doing that. But when did you say, hey, I need to scale this? Hey, I'm going to take on investment. And like, what does that look like? Because I think for the people that are probably tuning in, they're probably looking at you like, what's the tea on that? Because I'm sure you have some good insight there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in our first year of business, we did respectable 6 figures of business, and we did 0 paid acquisition at that time. And listen, I'm in a very fortunate position. I have an Instagram account where I can send messages out for free and connect to an audience. So at a baseline, like that's how I built the initial core audience of women who are customers of Love Wellness. I would say that when we hit $1 million in revenue is when we realized that we had something that could be really significant and meaningful. And when we were looking at, our ROAS score and our ROI and all of these things, the numbers were just through the roof. So it was really clear that there was an eager, hungry consumer for the products that we were making. And so I think that if you have your own business, it's pretty easy to go out and get information on sort of where those numbers need to be sitting within your own business to understand if you have something that is potentially super successful, is already successful, or you have some work to do. So it was really at that point where we got a sense that there was a really huge market opportunity and that we were doing everything right, that we decided to pursue fundraising, start building our team, and really lean into Love Wellness. And for me, it was probably 2 years into it, and we've been doing it for 4 years now, because up until then I was still creating a lot of content on my own. I was still doing some influencer marketing because I had to pay my rent, and I didn't take a salary, until last August. And so I was sort of surviving or living this double life, I would say, where I was focused full time on Love Wellness, but I was still trying to kind of maintain this, like brand image that I could work with a food company or a liquor company or a makeup company or wherever. And frankly, I'm relieved that I don't have to do that anymore, because for me, at least, it was very soul sucking. I know that some people really love to live the influencer life, but for me, it was always very uncomfortable. It's like when you log into your bank account and you're like, oh God, you're afraid of what you see there. A lot of the times I don't even want to go on Instagram and post that stupid ad. I hate it. So I'm really happy now that I have, like a real life job platform that I get to, I guess I would say get up and go to work every day, but we're not doing that now. So get up and open my computer.
I'm loving like your soft spot for like being like a W-2 employee.
Yeah.
You're like happy to like get dressed, go to work. So
I am. There's like sustainability and safety in that,
Yeah.
Like coming from the entertainment industry and background, I always hated that I was living paycheck to paycheck. And it really made it difficult for me to create long-term goals for myself and to build upon those goals. Because when you're just an influencer or you're just blogging, like what is the long-term plan for you? Like, is it your own brand? Is it just content forever? I don't know. That life made me feel really insecure.
I mean, I don't want to really go off topic, but I just want to say, like, you speaking so open and honestly about that, I think is just really interesting, because I'm imagining that even though we live in the culture of it, there are a lot of people that feel this way, but for you to have but I also guess the fact that you have a successful business and you're the CEO of something that gives you something to root in, I'm assuming, right?
Of course, it's very helpful, 100%.
Yeah. So when I look at the Love Wellness brand, it's very clear that you guys think very directly about who your target consumer is, your brand, knowing all the things you mentioned earlier about, the coronavirus, the stay-at-home orders, this movement towards being more thoughtful and more self-awareness for perhaps people that weren't aware of issues that the Black community faces and things like that. How are you guys sort of approaching and maintaining your presence on social media right now? I know we talked about some things feeling performative for other brands. Where do you guys kind of sit or think about it?
Well, I think that when I started the company, which was in 2016, I guess I've said that already, I really founded it in the principal belief that all women deserve to feel well and have access to clean products and that critically important education. And to do that effectively, you have to make sure that your customers feel safe, they feel valued, included, and they feel represented. And, from day one, that's been a priority, and we continue to make that a priority. I know that when we chatted last week, you're like, I went back on your feed and I saw, Black women and people of color from the beginning. So, thank you. But I mean, truly for us, it's not about being performative. It's about gathering voices from many different communities to make sure that we are doing right by all women, right? And so, like, the goal originally was to create a brand that is sort of squarely opposite from a goop type of business, like wellness business, because in my mind, those businesses are so focused on like whiteness, thinness, like, do you have $100 to buy something? So like, we wanted to do something that was squarely opposite of that from an accessibility standpoint, when it comes to price points, perspectives, cultural backgrounds. And truly, like I said, like the only way to do that is from the ground up by building our brand voice and the products that we create for women with the help of an inclusive group of women so that we can address as best as possible the variety of issues that a wide group of women face from as many cultural perspectives as possible. So for us, I would say that this really starts with that wellness advisory board that I've mentioned. So our wellness advisory board is 2/3 Black women and women of color. They help us formulate our products, they drive brand awareness, and they educate our audience. And so for us, like, we make sure that these ambassadors are out speaking on behalf of our community. And I think what's also interesting is we feature them heavily on our social media platforms, in press, and in media opportunities. And then on the other side of that, from sort of like an organic and paid marketing perspective, we focus on featuring our actual customers from our community to share their stories of love wellness versus influencers that you could hire off of Instagram. I think what's interesting though about the customers that we feature is that right now we're actually putting all of them into a program to become paid brand ambassadors, so they can actually like represent our brand within our community platform that we are building, which is the Love Club. So again, it's about us featuring and highlighting inclusive voices so that as a consumer, like I said, you feel safe, you feel valued, and you feel included. And when you see that our customers directly represent who you are, that means that we are doing our job of making self-care for women truly accessible for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest, when they were like, it's going to be with Lauren Bosworth and Love Wellness, I was like, let me go through their Instagram feed to make sure they knew Black women existed before June 2nd, because it seems like there was like this shift where like everyone woke up and was like, oh, wait, we haven't been very inclusive, or not recognizing like the Black female experience is different than the white female experience, and kind of how do you make sure that all those conversations are happening. So I definitely looked for the receipts. So they were there. So what's next for you guys? I know you're on set, but it sounds like your brand is growing and there's a lot going on. Love to hear what you guys have going on next.
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, I think that what we have been able to do really successfully is create a core audience of women that are really interested in the products that we have now, which are really targeted supplements and personal care products. So we haven't gone very broad with our product offering yet in terms of this this invisible product that I'm holding in my hand could be really used by all women, right? Something that you could, I could give it to everyone in this room. They'd be like, yeah, I want that. And so I think for us as a brand, as we continue to grow our audience, we go out and continue to become discoverable for women who are looking for targeted solutions. But also when we introduce more general broad products to our audience, then we have the ability to become a true lifestyle leader for women. I think from a technology standpoint, what we're doing is really exciting and a huge point of differentiation for our brand as well. So I touched on it very briefly. We have this amazing community called the Love Club. And so it is a forums and education part of our website where you can use your e-commerce sign on to access our forums and to interact with those wellness advisory board members, with polls, to create your own content, et cetera, et cetera. And so we have big plans for the Love Club because we don't feel like anything like this really exists yet out there. And to be able to connect it to a CPG brand and sort of like bring those two verticals together is really, really exciting for us, for how we can continue to educate women and spread awareness about who we are and our mission as a brand, right? I think you're looking at brands like Sephora and Glossier doing that really well, right? They've like built these communities of makeup enthusiasts, and we really believe that women are wellness enthusiasts in the same way.
That's cool. I love that. I love the name, the Love Club. Like, who doesn't want to be a part of a love club?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The Love Club.
So I'm seeing some audience questions come in, and I'm going to ask a few of them because they're questions that I'm like, I want to know that too.
Okay.
Yeah, they're good. Don't worry. So, Lauren, I know you guys are very active on social. What is your point of view of like TikTok and some of their emerging shopping capabilities? Any plans to expand there or experiment?
So we have experimented a little bit with TikTok. We're still in the beginning stages of working on TikTok. We just hired a great new director of social media who has a lot of experience with TikTok. But it's a platform that we're going to sort of consider using, but we have not figured out the strategy for it yet. I'll be totally honest with you.
Yeah. And then you kind of touched
TikTok once though, and it was fun, and it really helped to sail the one day we posted it. So like we should be doing it. It's just, do we have the bandwidth to do it?
Yeah, because once you're on it, it is a whole mood.
Yes.
So here's a question that what do you think is the best way to get your brand out there? What's some advice you can share for the people tuning in?
So, man, that's a complicated question. I would say if you have a brand that has a product, let's take a brand that has a physical product, right? I would say that making sure that your storytelling is very specific and focused is the first thing that you should be able to do. Like if a consumer comes on your website, you should be able to answer like, what is it? What is it for? How does it work? And how is it different immediately? Like people should be able to understand that when they land on your website. So before you start running ads or posting stuff on Instagram or emailing your friends about it, just make sure that you yourself know exactly what it is that you're making, exactly how you're communicating it to people, and what those points of differentiation are. I know that's like a simple answer, but a lot of people get like stuck in that part of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really tangible answer because I think sometimes if you go back through with like a fresh pair of eyes and ask yourself the questions that you just asked, sometimes you can't answer all of them and you're like, oh, I need to.
Totally. It's kind of like going back to, in English class when they would make you write those 5 paragraph essays. You sort of have to like run that exercise yourself through a different lens, of course. But it's like, am I telling people like what it is and what it is for in very simple terms?
Yeah, like simple, right? Like, is it understandable on first read, right?
Totally.
Ooh. So here's a
not always.
Right. No, yours is no. So here's a fun. I know you touched on it earlier, just about you already sort of coming into this with a platform where you could sort of do it just that, right? Like test the market, get the audience's appetite, your own sort of, consumers that are interested in you prior to this. How do you think your previous life as sort of a TV star has perhaps helped or hindered your life as a CEO?
So I think it's twofold, or there's sort of like two experiences or perspectives. One is really positive because I have an existing audience. I can go out and get press easily. I'm somebody that can talk about a brand and, people will run that piece, right? So I can get eyeballs for free on whatever it is that I'm talking about. I think on the flip side of that, having a reality TV background, you're sort of always branded as that. And it's taken a really long time to continue to work through that. And even still, I live under that byline, right? Even today's webinars, from reality TV to Instagram to CEO. So it's always going to be a part of my story. I think it's a matter of my own branding and storytelling. And if I tell the right story for long enough, eventually you can change the narrative. But I think for me, I've always been somebody who wants to be in the business world, wants to be taken seriously, understand that I have a perspective and a point of view that is valuable and should be valued. And so I think for me, like that's sort of both ends of the spectrum, right? Like I get all these freebies, but then there's also this piece of it that is like, do people really take you seriously?
Well, I think those are all the questions and the questions that came in from the audience. Thank you, Lauren, so much for being so open and honest and real. And I know you had a busy day on set today, so we definitely appreciate you giving us the time. Thanks for tuning in, everyone, on VidCon now. And we hopefully will see each other soon in person and give each other a hug at some point. But until then, zoom, 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 I guess. Thanks
Christina.
Thank
this
you.
So great.